If you feel targeted, I'm not here to mock you. I'm not here to dismiss your experience. But I want to ask a difficult question. What if some of what feels like targeting is actually just the mind trying to make sense of overwhelming stress? In this video, I want to examine the idea of gang stalking and targeted individuals from a different angle. Not to dismiss anyone's experience, but to offer an alternative framework for understanding what might be happening. Now, I'm not claiming people never experience harassment or hostility in life. History shows us that surveillance, manipulation, and psychological pressure has been used before by governments, institutions, and powerful groups. For example, documented programs like COINTELPRO involved targeting surveillance and disruption of specific political groups. They had budgets, personnel, clear objective, paper trails, real coordinated efforts, and the required infrastructure. But there's a difference between acknowledging real historical abuse and assuming every experience of distress must mean coordinated targeting. The former does not imply the later circumstance. My position is simple. Some experiences are real, some interpretations are mistaken, and the difference matters. The experience can feel real, the fear can feel real, the distress can feel real, but that doesn't mean that the explanation is always correct. The conclusion drawn from the experience is not always accurate. Two people can experience the same event and interpret it completely differently. One sees coincidence, the other sees coordination. The event doesn't change, only the interpretation does. The mind doesn't observe reality neutrally, as things really are. First, it predicts. The brain is a prediction machine. It builds models from past experiences. The mind asks, what is most likely happening here? Then it looks for matching evidence. If threat has been linked before, that pattern activates faster. When something ambiguous happens, a stranger looks too long, a car slows down, a neighbor behaves oddly. The mind interprets through its existing model, and when that model includes threat, neutral events can feel coordinated. The stronger the expectation, the stronger the confirmation feels. Certainty is a feeling, but it's not necessarily proof. Here's a real-world example. My family member parked in a car park, an almost empty car park. When they returned, a van was parked very close. The driver had banged their door into their car and behaved aggressively. To someone already fearful of being targeted, that could easily look like deliberate harassment. But the explanation was much simpler. The man had a missing leg. He was probably frustrated, bitter, maybe just having a bad day. He behaved badly. Not strategically, just badly. So what felt like targeting had a much simpler human explanation. We rarely know what burdens other people are carrying, and not every hostile person is part of a coordinated operation. There exists an innate function in how our mind works. When someone feels under threat for a long time, the brain adapts. It becomes hyper alert. Pattern seeking, constantly scanning the horizon, looking for confirmation. It's a survival mechanism. In ancient environments, this kept people alive. But in modern societies, it can overload. Too much information, too many unknown faces, too many different events. And strange systems connect dots that aren't actually connected. Let's simplify something. The brain doesn't ask, is this morally correct? It asks, did this reduce tension? If a behavior lowers stress, even temporarily, the system marks it as useful. That doesn't make it right, it makes it reinforced. And that applies to everyone. Some people act aggressively or behave badly, not because it's strategic, not because it's coordinated, but because in that moment it worked for their internal state. Bad behaviors don't require intent, they only require reinforcement. Question: can online communities unintentionally amplify our beliefs, even those that might not be right? When people share experiences that sound similar, it can feel like confirmation, sure, but similarity is not evidence of coordination. Stress looks similar, anxiety looks similar, isolation looks similar, trauma responses look similar across the board. There's a very large amount of context that's not available to us when someone comments about their experience with gang stalking. We may not know their name, their location, their age, their job, their interests, their economic status, or anything else. Yet, we take a small, slim piece of information and take it on as if this slim piece of information represented the whole picture. But let's slow down and define gang stalking properly, because if you can't define something clearly, you can't diagnose it clearly. You can't confirm it. So gang stalking is typically described as deliberate surveillance, harassment, psychological pressure by a coordinated group of people toward a specific individual for a specific purpose. The key parts are coordination, intent, consistency, purpose, and incentive. Real coordinated targeting would show repeated behaviors, escalation, clear motive, and evidence of planning. Not just uncomfortable encounters, not just strange people, not just bad days. There's a question of logistics. Coordinated harassment requires people, time, money, incentive, and risk. Even for a large group, there's always risk. Good people are everywhere. These are tools for specific goals, not casual activity or casual harassment. What would justify this level of effort? What would realistically be gained? In most cases, there is no rational incentive. Suspicion is not proof. If a claim cannot be tested, challenged, or falsified, it becomes belief. That distinction matters. So I have a central question. Is it possible something difficult is happening, but it has been given the wrong explanation? Stress is real. Hostility from individuals is always real. Instability is real. Coincidence is real. But coordinated intent is a very specific claim. Chronic stress changes perception. When someone lives under prolonged pressure, the nervous system adapts. The nervous system becomes more alert, more pattern sensitive, more ready to detect threat. That doesn't mean someone is flawed. It means they've been under strain for a long time. When we are under stress, the brain looks for coherence, an understanding that makes sense. One explanation, one pattern, one structure that makes sense of everything. And once that structure forms, it can feel certain, even if it isn't accurate. I recognize hypervigilance in myself, pattern scanning, overanalysis, my mind trying to protect itself. That doesn't make me broken, it makes me human under pressure. Sometimes the world doesn't change for us, but the lens does. And when the lens changes, the entire world looks different.